Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. My name is Manuel Soto, and I stand before you today as counsel for Mr. Theodore Robert Bundy. We are here to examine the evidence presented by the prosecution, and it is my duty to demonstrate that the forensic aspects of this investigation, upon closer scrutiny, do not unequivocally prove Mr. Bundy's guilt. The prosecution has built its case in part on three key pieces of physical evidence allegedly linking Mr. Bundy to the horrific crime scenes at the Chi Omega sorority house. First, a bite mark found on the buttock of the deceased, Mrs. Lisa Levy. Second, hairs discovered at the crime scene. And third, fibers purportedly found in Mr. Bundy's vehicle and matching those at the scene. It is crucial to understand how these items became part of the investigation in the chaotic aftermath of the brutal attacks. Investigators meticulously collected numerous pieces of potential evidence from the sorority house and the surrounding area, later following Mr. Bundy's arrest. Items were also collected from his vehicle. Now, jury, let's consider the admissibility of these pieces of evidence. The Fourth Amendment of our Constitution protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. We must ask whether each of these items were obtained legally. So first, we examined the bite mark evidence, which was gathered from the victim's body during the forensic examination. This procedure is a standard protocol in a homicide investigations aimed at identifying any potential assailants through physical characteristics. As such, the collection of this evidence typically adheres to established legal guidelines, thereby supporting its admissibility in court. Next, the collection of hair samples from the crime scene merits scrutiny, since this location is where the alleged crime occurred. The gathering of such biological materials falls within the parameters of permissible evidence collected during a crime scene investigation. Law enforcement is generally afforded considerable latitude to recover evidence from crime scenes, as it aids in constructing the narrative of events and identifying suspects. The fibers, however, present a more complex issue as they were obtained from Mr. Bundy's vehicle following his arrest. The legality of this seizure is contingent upon the validity of the arrest itself and whether law enforcement followed proper procedures when conducting the search of his vehicle. This raises concerns regarding the circumstances surrounding Mr. Bundy's arrest, including whether probable cause existed at the time and whether the arresting officers adhered to constitutional protocols. If these protocols were mishandled, it could significantly jeopardize the admissibility of the fiber evidence in court. In summary, while the bite mark evidence and hair samples appear to be gathered within acceptable legal frameworks, the fibers obtained from Mr. Bundy's vehicle may pose challenges that require closer examination, particularly regarding the legitimacy of the arrest and subsequent search warrant execution. These factors could ultimately influence the court's decision on the admissibility of the fiber evidence. Now, in analyzing the nature of this evidence, it is crucial to make a clear distinction between class characteristics and individual characteristics. Class characteristics are features that are shared by a particular group of items, which can include aspects like size, shape, or material composition that apply to multiple objects within that category. These features can help narrow down the possibilities when identifying sources, but do not provide a conclusive link to a single item. On the other hand, individual characteristics are specific attributes that can be attributed to a particular item, making it unique. This may include microscopic markings, specific wear patterns, or particular alterations. Individual characteristics are significant because they serve as a definitive proof that an item originated from a specific source, thereby increasing the reliability of the evidence in forensic investigations or other analytical contexts. The distinction between class and individual characteristics is fundamental in the field of forensic science. The bite mark, the prosecution argues, possesses individual characteristics. They contend that the unique arrangement of Mr. Bundy's teeth as analyzed through dental impressions and compared to the mark on Mrs. Levy, is so distinct that it could only have been made by him. However, the science of bite mark analysis has come under increasing scrutiny. There are many factors such as skin elasticity, distortion at the time of the bite, and inconsistencies in forensic odontological analysis can lead to unreliable conclusions. While a bite mark might suggest a possibility of a match as class characteristics human teeth, it rarely provides a definitive individual link that the prosecution claims. The hairs found at the scene are class evidence. Microscopic analysis might reveal characteristics such as color, length, and diameter, potentially placing them within a broad group of individuals. Unless a hair follicle with DNA is present, these characteristics are not unique to Mr. Bundy and could belong to numerous other individuals who may have been present at the sorority house. The prosecution will likely argue that the combination of these class characteristics found at the scene matches Mr. Bundy's hair, increasing the probability of a link. However, probability is not certainty. Similarly, the fibers are primarily class evidence. Fibers can be categorized by type, color, and weave. The prosecution will likely present an expert who will testify that fibers found on the victims or at the crime scene are consistent with fibers found in Mr. Bundy's vehicle. However, these types of fibers are common in clothing and carpets, and their presence does not definitively place Mr. Bundy at this scene. The argument will likely rest on the uniqueness of the combination of fiber types or colors, suggesting a higher probability of a link. Again, this is a matter of probability, not an irrefutable individual match like a fingerprint or DNA, which is notably absent in this particular case. The laboratory analysis of this evidence is also crucial. We must examine methodologies used and the potential for error. Bite mark analysis is subjective and relies heavily on the examiner's interpretation. Were the photographs and modes taken with sufficient precision? We don't know. Were protocols followed in the comparison? That we don't know. The analysis of hairs and fibers involves microscopic examination and sometimes chemical testing. What controls were in place to prevent such contamination? What standards of comparison were used? We will argue that the subjective nature of the bite mark analysis and the commonality of hair and fiber evidence, coupled with potential for error in collection and analysis, weaken the prosecution's claims. From the defense perspective, this evidence, when subjected to rigorous scrutiny, fails to provide the individual link necessary to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The bite mark is a contested science, offering at best a possible association. The hairs and fibers were class evidence consistent with a broad population, and their presence could be explained by numerous innocent scenarios. The prosecution's case relies on the cumulative effect of this evidence, arguing that the probability of all these matches occurring by chance is infinitesimally small. However, each piece of evidence individually lacks the definitive individual characteristics required for absolute identification. Conversely, the prosecution will argue that while each piece of evidence might not be conclusive on its own, the convergence of all three, the bite mark matching Mr. Bundy's dentition, hairs consistent with his found at the scene, and fibers in his car matching those found on the victims, creates an overwhelmingly probability of his involvement. They will likely emphasize the expertise of their forensic analysis and the protocols followed in the laboratory. To counter this, we must emphasize the inherent limitations of these forensic techniques. We will highlight the subjectivity of bite mark analysis and the potential for misidentification. We will stress that the commonality of hair and fiber evidence and the lack of a unique individual match. We will argue that correlation does not equal causation, and that the prosecution is asking you to make a leap of faith based on probabilities, not certainties. The absence of more definitive individual evidence, such as fingerprints directly linking my client, Mr. Bundy, to the scene, or DNA evidence, is a significant weakness in their case. In conclusion, while the prosecution presents these three pieces of evidence as irrefutable links to Mr. Bundy, a thorough examination reveals their limitations. The bite mark analysis is questionable, and the hair and fiber evidence lacks the individual characteristics necessary for a positive identification. The laboratory analysis, while perhaps following standard protocols, cannot overcome the inherent limitations of the evidence itself. The prosecution's case rests on a chain of probabilities and not a bedrock of certainty. We maintain that this forensic evidence, when carefully considered, does not meet the high standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt required for a conviction of my client. Thank you.